You're listening to Generations of Genius, the show where big ideas spark across generations. Every week, we'll tell stories and interview entrepreneurs of all ages, uncovering the genius that drives innovation forward. Powered by Innovation Station Kits on the Launch Network. Here's your host, award-winning inventor, children's author, educator, and serial entrepreneur, Kelly Shea.
Hello, and welcome everyone. I hope you had a great week and you're having an even better day. But I'm really excited to dive into one of our new stories today on episode 2 of Generations of Genius. Welcome to the show today, where we are going to explore how creativity, curiosity, and a few wrong turns can lead to some of the world's greatest inventions. So today we're really excited. This is definitely one of my favorite stories to share, especially with new entrepreneurs, and it is the story of the Post-it note. So let's jump into things. Our story begins in 1968 at 3M, a company known for turning everyday ideas into useful products. There was a scientist there named Dr. Spencer Silver who was working to create a super strong adhesive for aircraft use. But what he invented was quite the opposite. His adhesive was weak and it could only stick things lightly and peel off cleanly. So it was definitely not strong enough for planes. I definitely would not want to hop in a plane that was held together using that material. But interesting enough, he kept experimenting with it. So now it didn't solve any known problem. In fact, it created a new one of what do you do with glue that doesn't really stick too well. Now here it's funny because most people might move on from this failure, right? But Spencer didn't. He actually kept sharing his failed adhesive, hoping someone would see the potential that he saw in the glue. Years later, another 3M employee named Art Fry was singing in his church choir when inspiration struck. He kept losing his paper bookmarks and remembered Spencer's unusual adhesive. So Art thought, what if I could make the bookmark that sticks to the page but doesn't rip the page when I pull it off? That tiny spark of curiosity turned a forgotten lab experiment into a brand new idea. Art and Spencer decided to team up to develop what would later become the Post-it note, though at the time no one quite understood how revolutionary this failed product was. Now, I want to take a moment to discuss this, right? A lot of times we see inventions as having to be perfect the first try, but that's the beauty of a prototype. Even when you're working for a company, right, the failures are what teach us to take those items and turn them into something better. So now when they approached 3M, they didn't buy in at first. Early tests failed and people didn't really see the point in sticky paper. But funny enough, after giving away some free samples in Boise, Idaho, something amazing happened and people could not stop using them. They wanted more and a lot more. Just like that, what started as a failed adhesive became one of the world's most successful office products. Now, something that I always seem to take away from this story is how they pivoted. So what is pivoting, right? It's a word that we hear a lot, but maybe isn't used as often as we would like. Pivoting is when you actually make a strategic shift in the company's direction to adapt to market demands, right? So 3M saw this as a failed paper. Why would people want it? Dr. Spencer, right? He saw it as a failed product. Again, why would people want it? But Art saw it as something revolutionary. He identified what that problem was and thought of it as the perfect solution. So this is when the demand started, and they originally, right, had this adhesive for planes that they were developing, right, to hold plane parts together. But pivoting was so crucial when it came to the success of the Post-it note. Sometimes we mark off our failures, but I always think it's good to write them down. Keep those failures, keep log of the failures because you never know when that's going to turn into a success. Now, failures are important because they provide learning opportunity to guide those future decisions. If Dr. Spencer didn't fail, then they would have never seen the opportunity for the Post-it note, which was one of the most successful products today. So pivoting is crucial for adapting to market changes, competition, and customer feedback. So this is when a lot of time when people approach me, I tell them to not make the product perfect. We sometimes have to put the product out there in order to get that customer feedback and accurately learn how we can pivot, how we can make the product better and the design better. And also, you might be surprised on what that market segment might be, right? Obviously, Dr. Spencer didn't know the potential of this failed glue. But once they kind of put it out there more and through communicating it with the company and 3M, that's when art saw the beauty in the design. And then they tested it and put it out there for people to try in Boise, where the demand skyrocketed. So we have to learn from our failures. It's important to provide learning opportunities to guide future decisions. With all of this being said, by embracing failures and knowing when to pivot, businesses can innovate, stay relevant, and build a stronger foundation for success. So, funny enough, that actually wasn't the end of the story. It wasn't just a success and 3M profited off of it, or Dr. Spencer, or art. Now, like many inventions, success also brought some controversy. Years later, another former 3M scientist, Alan M. Ron, claimed that he had originally conceived the idea for the reusable sticky notes and that 3M had actually used his concept without proper credit. 3M and Emron eventually reached a settlement, and while the details were never fully public, the case serves as a reminder that innovation often happens in overlapping ways, especially when creative minds are chasing similar ideas. This is something we always try to convey with inventors, right? Because again, when you're sitting on your design, someone else, I guarantee you, is also working on it. This is why we always express to get the product out there. Now, of course, the question comes into play with IP, intellectual property, and things of that nature. But sometimes it's more valuable to get that product out there while working on that provisional patent or a utility patent, design patent, in order to get that feedback because your product's not going to be finalized. You're going to pivot just like they did. If they filed a patent on this glue, right, the way that it was originally intended, then they might not be able to use it for the Post-it note. And this is where we have to be careful not to sit too long on a product. So this is a kind of a lesson to all, right? Alan had this idea, he brought it up, but he sat on it and didn't act. And this is when you have to keep in mind that if you have this idea, there might be 100 other people out there with the same idea and working to find a solution. Start getting that out there and your ideas and your thoughts because you never fully know the potential of it, right? Who is going to be the first to bring it to market? And that's what you have to keep in mind. How many times have you kind of had this idea and then maybe in the shower, maybe not in the shower, you write it down, maybe you don't write it down, whatever that may be. And then let's say like 5 years later, you see it on a shelf or you see an ad for it online. You're like, wow, I wish I did it. I would have made millions. So stop sitting on your products and just get it out there. Find ways to get it out in public. You're really that passionate about it and you really want to make a difference. So that's something that's a big takeaway from this lesson. It's a powerful example of how multiple people can share the same spark of genius and how collaboration, transparency, and shared credit matter just as much as the invention itself. The story of the Post-it note isn't just about a sticky piece of paper. It's about perseverance, perspective, and the courage to see value in something that doesn't work the way you expected. Our product isn't going to be an overnight success. Some people get lucky and that happens, but 9 out of 10 inventions actually fail. But how can we take those failures and turn them into a success? Spencer Silver's failed glue, Art Fry's practical problem, and even the later debates over credit all teach the same thing. Invention isn't a straight line. It's messy, shared, and sometimes misunderstood, but every attempt brings us closer to the next great idea. So next time you're working on something that doesn't necessarily go as planned, remember this. Your so-called failure might be the beginning of something that sticks. I'm Kelly Shea, and this is Generations of Genius, where we celebrate ideas, mistakes, and moments that shape innovation across generations. Don't forget to follow, share, and join us next week for another story of how curiosity changes the world.